There's the FBI, CIA, and MI6. And then, there's Camp X. Never heard of it? That's not a surprise. Canadians are good at keeping secrets. In the 1940s, a farm between Whitby and Oshawa became the location of an alliance between Britain, the United States, and, yes, Canada. Part of the reason I'm trying to write about the experience is because I'm not dumb. The brotherhood between our nations is weakening. Young folks aren't learning. Maybe they don't care about the men and women that died together. They weren't Americans or Canadians then. They were just people. And they gave everything to prevent evil from covering the world in a darkness so complete, the world said collectively, never again. Well, it's happening again, kids. And Canadians like to pretend they're better than their American brothers, while too many in the US joke about annexing the 51st state. Let me be very clear. If we don't remember who we are, who we really are, it's over. Maybe that's enough lecturing. There's no easy way to broach the strange but true history. Camp X trained spies, saboteurs, and assassins from all over the world. Roald Dahl apparently trained there. Maybe Ian Fleming, the James Bond writer, too. I never met them, and I'm not a writer. But I'll give it my best shot. I have to. You need to know the truth. The camp had many purposes and locations everywhere. Most were so secret even the Prime Minister never heard of them until after 1946, when he was told it had been shut down. Told. Intrepid, the man who trained me, said the faces of nations couldn't be trusted not to leak the truth. Russia had been spying on foreign governments since the First World War. Hell, they'd even infiltrated the Manhattan Project. By the end of World War II, the Cold War had begun in earnest. New forms of combat, subterfuge, and psychological warfare became commonplace. That stuff you can read about in history books, or Wikipedia. It became a concrete reality for Canada and the US on September 5th of 1944. Igor Guzenko, a Soviet cipher clerk working in the embassy in Ottawa, revealed the presence of a spy ring in our country. The nation got scared. Measures were taken. And life went on a little bit less naively. A little more careful. Intrepid already knew about the spy ring, even before the end of the war. He knew about Guzenko, and that the defector planned to exchange this information for protection. That's why Intrepid sent me to Ottawa on September 1st, to kill Igor Guzenko, before he talked. No need to spook out citizens or publicly inform the USSR that we knew they were here. I waited in yet another shadow, wondering how I could possibly infiltrate the Soviet embassy. Fortunately, Guzenko saved me the trouble. A young man swiftly emerged from a discreet exit I'd overlooked on my first pass, probably for couriers. Guzenko zipped between two houses and across the street. He never saw me coming. But maybe he sensed it. He cut down an alley on his way to wherever, and almost didn't make it out the other side. Luck, fate, or something worse, given what I now know, saved him. I'd used my garrote, a barbed wire between two steel rings, on a number of targets. The left ring snapped off before the steel could bite. Guzenko fell into a puddle. Not ideal. A little sloppy. He'd seen my face. He started talking rapidly in Russian as I retrieved the pen dagger from inside my jacket. Wait, he cried. You're not NKVD? KGB? Who are you? I don't know why I didn't kill him. The consequences of failure would be severe. Canadians weren't ready for the Red Scare. They weren't ready for the secret wars that were already in motion since before the end of the war. Why are you outside the embassy? I asked him. He frowned and got up slowly. I think you know. Defiant. I was starting to like him.
The real question is, why don't you want the information I have?
We already know about the spy ring, I said, feeling control of the moment slipping away. Intrepid had given me orders. What was I doing?
There's more,
he said. The Manhattan Project. We know.
No,
he said, and he suddenly clammed up, hesitant to speak. I gestured with the knife. You obviously know why I'm here. I shrugged. Time is not your friend. Neither am I. He held out his palms.
I don't want to die. I have a family. Tonight is only trial run for when I truly intend to make my escape. With my wife, our daughter.
Desperation crossed his expression briefly. His discipline as a diplomat resumed, and his eyes regained their steel. Igor Guzenko had moxie. Hard not to respect such a guy. I am sorry, I said, starting to feel bad. Not that I had to kill him, but because I dragged out the ordeal. If the garrote hadn't busted, he'd have been dead before he knew it. I was damn fast with that thing.
No,
he said.
I am sorry. For what I have to show you. For what you have to see.
Nobody, not Intrepid, not the Almighty himself, could have prepared me for what followed. Guzenko shrugged off his jacket, and the sleeves of his button-up were already rolled, revealing a tattoo on his forearm. I'd seen a few markings on sailors before, but nothing like this. A snake coiled around an invisible and shamefully seductive feminine form. I know my description doesn't make a lot of sense. There is no woman within the snake. There's not even an outline. But when I looked at it, there she was. Beautiful, with dark hair beyond her shoulders. I'm hallucinating, I managed, before swooning and taking a sideways dive into Guzenko's previously occupied puddle. He thrust his forearm into view.
No more,
he said.
She knows I go no further with her. I will die before I'm sorry, but someone needs to know. And you're not NKVD. I have seen so many. They have a look.
He sounded bitter and sad.
What's become of my countrymen?
My vision blurred. The strange tattoo. I couldn't see it on his skin anymore.
What did you do?
Had to be poison. Some agent I turned out to be.
Alton.
Someone. A woman. The one I couldn't see. How could I know that? Whispered into my ear.
Alton Anderson.
Her floral perfume seemed lightly applied, in order to allow the scent of her body, a mild, clean scent to delightfully cloud my already dulled senses. I wanted her instantly. The woman I never saw. She who did not exist.
When you wake up,
Guzenko said.
It will make more sense.
He shrugged.
Not much more sense. A little. I'm sorry. I'll be either in safe hands of Mounties by then, or dead.
He picked up his coat and didn't spare me another look. Fair enough. I had come to kill him. Shh, the invisible woman assured me. And I didn't mind so much this way of dying. The Soviets had perfected killing. I felt at ease, and surprisingly aroused. Someone would find my blushing corpse in the morning. You're not dying, Alton, she told me. You haven't been poisoned. A hand like warm silk patted my cheek. But stop resisting. Sleep. Go to sleep. Igor is right. I would have drowned myself in the puddle if she told me to. Fresh water in the air, cool spray on my face, and the steady whoosh of the Bridal Veil waterfall said I'd made my way home. Warm for September, I said to her. Her. To her. Olive had been with me. That's right, we were on our honeymoon and... No, that didn't happen. I opened my eyes as if I'd been resting them, and she stretched out in a portable lounge chair, her long legs languid, and freshly painted toenails dipped into the sand of the man-made beach. She wore one of those new bathing suits I'd read about, named after the nuclear tests in Bikini Atoll. Local council had already been concocting a moderation law and a steep fine for 2 pieces of fabric. Now that I'd seen one, in and the flesh, I'd have to reconsider my vote. What fool would ban such marvelous... Wait a minute. Wait a goddamn minute. You're distracting me, I said. Of course, she said playfully. Isn't that why we're married? Married? That didn't sound so bad. Instead of killing, spying, forever in the shadows, I could be one of the ordinaries. The type of person I sacrificed for without their ever knowing. There was only one thing missing. Her face. She kept it casually hidden behind her curtain of hair. Darling, I said. Look at me. She cooed as if distracted by a sailboat on the lake. I stood up. Felt dizzy. No, it wasn't me. The sky and the land. There was a gap in the horizon. I couldn't make out the shapes, the seemingly frantic movements. Darling, Olive asked, are you all right? I think you've had a bit too much champagne. Or too little. Why not sit down and have another? I pointed at the inconsistency in the distance. There's something there. Over there. What is it? When she moved, my curiosity, trepidation, and genuine attraction unified into the instinct to watch her. That hair worked like a prudy chaperone. Her face remained a mystery. The boat? I'm sure they'll figure it out. Or swim. The lake isn't so deep here. Isn't that what you told me when we first met? No, not the sailboat. Like a fool, I looked at what she meant. 3 men on the deck argued while the hull ran aground on the sandbar. Another daring bikini wearer stood nearby, studying her suitors. Isn't the answer to her question obvious? Olive purred, before yawning in such a way that made me tired. The question? I did feel like sitting down. Champagne with my wife. Our honeymoon. She should pick whoever owns the boat, darling. And if it's a rental? I asked, already and so easily distracted. She laughed. She never should have boarded. I laughed too. She had a way of putting troubles at a distance. Kiss me, darling. I knelt awkwardly in the sand and touched the back of her hand. Warm and soft, just like every bit of her. My face moved through the void between us. It felt off. Wrong, even. Like the first time I kissed a girl at a grade school party. Alcohol had been present. I was 13. Tall Amber Penrose didn't care for my expression of affection. She nearly knocked me out with her uppercut. Olive simply turned away. We can't. People will see. I'd rather she be honest, like tall Amber. She had liked girls. But such things were a foreign concept to a kid in the roaring 20s. Me too, I think I'd said. And she left me in the corner where I'd been laid out. You're in a bikini and you're worried about an innocent kiss between husband and wife? I didn't think so. She sighed. The bathing suit was your idea. Wait, was it? I couldn't remember. I turned away and, on all fours like a dog, looked away to the unnatural horizon. The partition between sky and land remained. "This isn't... Darling?" "No," I said, resisting. "Show me your face, Olive. Show me your face, my love." I leapt on the chair, only to find it empty, and also not a chair. "I can't show you, Alton," came her whisper in the breeze. "I am cursed. If I show you..." She hesitated. I can't, Alton. Try to understand. I would if I could. I really would." I stupidly clawed the air, trying to tear it apart to look for her. I was somehow on my back. "You were right, Alton," Olive said. "There's something there. Can't blame a girl for trying, especially with a fellow like you. Tall, dark, fit. Look at that curly hair, blue eyes. Are you sure we can't stay?" I ignored her and focused on what I'd seen on the horizon. The gap, it turned out, had been my own exposed eye. The sky and land were my eyelids. When fully opened, her illusion disappeared. Intrepid waited by a lengthy window pelted by the rain. He'd poured himself a whiskey from the bottle he strangled in his other hand.
"Guzenko defected,"
he said.
"Where are we?"
I felt fine. Alert, even. If not for the apprehension that accompanies waking up in a dark and unfamiliar place, I'd have said I'd just woken up from the best sleep I'd had since entering Camp X.
"We're in your new apartment, Alton."
He drank straight from the open bottle instead of the glass.
"Things have changed."
I looked around. The space wasn't huge, but had a high ceiling. A single room containing a king-sized bed, a bar, a desk, a dresser, and a fireplace. "What?" I asked. "No kitchen?" Intrepid smiled weakly. I'd never seen him look so beaten down.
"You'll have to eat in the casino. We're out on the town."
Casino? There were no Canadian casinos in the 1940s. No legal ones, anyway.
"It's a good location,"
Intrepid defended, slurring a little.
"Criminals don't ask too many questions if you pay. Nobody's surprised if they go missing."
I climbed out of bed. The sheets were silk. Like her.
"What's changed?"
I looked around. Olive had been some wacky nightmare, a product of Guzenko's poison. He hadn't touched me, though. Only that tattoo. I don't know how I knew to pull up my sleeve, but I did. Inside the coiled snake, she stood. Guzenko had imparted his tattoo to me. The urge to suddenly tear off my skin fell to the need to protect the image at all costs. The ice cubes in Intrepid's glass clinked. He drained his cup and placed it on the armrest of a chair, giving up the pretense of not killing the whole bottle. He sat down and sparked a Zippo for a cigarette. I failed, I admitted without shame. Agents failed sometimes. So what if this was a first for me? Why'd you let him live? Intrepid inhaled and kept the smoke in his lungs while he spoke.
"Take a look. A quick one."
He raised his forearm to show me his new ink. A red-tailed hawk. The most common bird of prey in Ontario, and usually less regal and foreboding than the one staring off my old teacher's skin. Its eyes were black and drew me in. Intrepid pulled his sleeve down before I lost myself. I gasped because his tattoo had me holding my breath. What the hell happened to us? His smoke released and wafted into the polished beams extending across the high ceiling. I followed its path because he did, and soon figures emerged. Tiny men in lab coats and another secured to a chair. The vague image disappeared, and I wondered if I'd seen it at all.
Our friend south of the border obtained footage of Soviet psychic ability. A woman, under what appears to be a controlled experiment, killed a small animal by stopping its heart with only her mind.
I couldn't stop my eyebrows from revealing what I thought. I see. Intrepid chuckled.
I know it sounds like, but in the footage, she had one of these.
He tapped his forearm. Guzenko isn't alive because he shared information about the spy ring and turned over documents. Is he? Another plume of smoke gave him time to measure his answer.
No, he is not.
Time for a drink, then. I put effort into a whiskey sour. Intrepid had 20 years on me, a man in his 50s, but you'd be surprised by that revelation. His black hair had no gray. He didn't slouch or wear the typical flabbiness of other men his age. We'd sparred plenty of times. He always won. Hell, I can't recall seeing the man sweat. Would have ruined the suit. And spoiled the fedora, I guess. Who is Olive? I asked after a stiff pull that defeated the purpose of a classy drink.
One of our new friends,
he said.
Who they are isn't the right question. It's what they are.
And that is? I could hear my impatience growing. Intrepid had never been reluctant to give orders and tell it like it is. All this stringing it out had me nervous. He could kill me. I don't think I could stop him.
Easy, kid.
Kid? I'd become an adult during the war. Honestly, I don't know when I'd ever been a child. At that moment, I realized something. I was 30 years old. A 30-year-old man who'd never been 20.
I'm sorry,
he said.
Look, I'm on edge too. I've got new orders.
He took off his hat and clutched the brim between his fingers.
The truth is, I don't know much more than you. I'm being sent to Toronto. This being your hometown, well, I guess they thought you'd defend this post better than anyone. You won't see me again, Alton. We're not to leave our assigned areas.
Now, the flow of information came too fast.
I don't understand.
He looked worried.
That makes two of us. But we aren't in this line of business to know. We're here.
You know, I said, because he always did. For a few seconds, I couldn't bear to look at him. The father figure I'd idolized turned out to be human after all. And that made me angry and ashamed.
Alton,
he said.
Not this time.
He put on his hat and stood up, flicking his spent cigarette butt into the empty fireplace. I stood in his path as he tried to leave. Why the hell are you here? How did I get here? The last thing I remember...
I brought you here,
he said.
I found you. As for your other question...
He stuck out his hand.
I came to say goodbye, son.
The outstretched hand looked worse than a broken promise. I trusted him with everything. Yes, hope for the future seemed ridiculous and bleak. But we fought the good fight together. What the hell am I doing here? One of my all-time worst regrets is letting him retract that hand without shaking it. He put on his heavy coat and retrieved an umbrella from the barrel by the door. His shoes tapped against the polished stone floor.
There's a Hydra in the closet,
he said.
Names will come through. Some information if available. Take out the targets, Alton. Keep it simple. Try to live a good life. Hopefully, see you on the other side.
Wait, He slipped through and closed the door like the wind.
Damn it.
I put the stupid drink on the bar and went for the closet in the corner. Sure enough, a replica of the Hydra shortwave radio filled the space. That explained the dresser. The machine consisted of several rectangular blocks and lights. A speaker would emit a coded message, most likely in Morse code or some other version. I didn't have the cipher, so I wasn't sure how. The dits and das pulsed rapidly to form a name. Kitty Esposito. I hadn't received an encoded message since training. The order to eliminate came through too. I didn't understand. Anyone might intercept such a message. It had to be assumed the Soviets or their spies were listening. They, those above Intrepid's lofty clearance, wanted them to know we had the name. Why? Go on down to the casino, honey. I'll wait up. Her again. Her voice had come from the bar, as if she were occupying the nearest stool, or stretched out on the lacquered surface. Olive, invisible, exhaled, and the faint scent of Pall Mall tobacco filled the apartment. Olive? No answer. Of course not. The Pall Mall smoke had gone too. Had Intrepid even been here? I took a deep breath. When the brain goes, you might as well too. I put on the jacket and the shoulder holster, hanging off the coat rack. Inside were the tools of my trade. A knife that looked like a pen, a well-wrought pistol, a new garrote, a cigarette case with a hidden compartment for lockpicking tools, and a trio of poisonous capsules. Ricin, cyanide, and thallium. A wallet inside the pocket also came with $1,000 in cash, and a celluloid card for the Canadian Bank of Commerce. Alton Anderson, my real name, had been printed on it, along with an account number. This mission outranked all the rest for brazen carelessness. Instant suspicion rattled my worldview. Maybe they, whoever operated the sliver of the RCMP charged with covert security, wanted us dead, and fast. Perhaps the Soviets had won the secret war. It only had to separate agents and pick us off for its own political ambitions. Intrepid said to keep it simple. He'd never steered me wrong before. I took another deep breath that didn't help a bit, and went into the narrow, undecorated hallway, occupied only by my door at one end, and an unattended elevator at the other. No stairs. Better hope the lift never broke down. Fully automated elevators made people uncomfortable. They preferred a human being at the controls. Small talk made me uncomfortable, so I liked this advancement fine. Another set of solid steel doors stood shut across from the bifurcated ones. When I stepped in, I understood how the apartment would stay hidden. The doors behind me looked like the wood-paneled walls. A chair rail across the middle appeared seamless. 3 bakelite buttons were lit. 451. This would be the code for the way to my new home, if I came back from whatever I walked into on the main floor. Elevators in the 40s generally moved pretty slow. Safety over speed. A smooth ride essential to that safe feeling in a world changing too fast. I had time to think. Who was Kitty Esposito? And why did she need to die? Aside from taking for granted she'd be in Bridal Veil Lake, I had nothing else to go on. The traditional-looking doors opened on a busy, illegal casino floor. Cards, dice, wheels, slot machines, and a swing band on stage gave the authentic Nevada impression. There were plenty of gamblers. The dealers wore green vests and matching bow ties. Men in darker suits sat at the bar. They eyed the players like cattle. 2 big boys guarded the exit with unconcealed iron on their hips. I looked for the boss, but none presented. I went to the bar. Maybe these criminals had heard of Kitty Esposito. The bartender eyed me warily. "Whiskey," I said. He didn't move. Instead, his eyes trailed to a huge fellow I'd missed. I think I'd mistaken his jacket for one slung over a wide-backed chair. Heavily muscled and facially scarred, Frank DeFranco made his height differential known. As he turned, revealing a young girl no more than 15, crying on the last stool at the bar. He stood, a good head and a half above me.
"What the hell do you think you're doing?"
Frank asked. I didn't know who he was or why he mattered, and I didn't care. The distraught girl had my attention. A regular-sized mobster pushed off the wall and whispered,
"Frank, this is the spook Will told us about."
Frank stared. I'm not quite 6 feet. This monster had to be a few inches away from 7.
"Only made men drink at the bar,"
he said.
"I don't care who you are. You wait for one of the waitresses to find you."
He tried to poke his finger into my chest for emphasis. I plucked the digit from the air and bent it over his wrist. He squealed, and took a meaty swing that had zero hope of landing. I released his finger, ducked, and took a step back. My composure, I believe, confused him. He stared, uncertain about his next move. So I went first. If we're going to have to live together, then we'll need some ground rules. Illegal gambling, I can abide. Good Lord knows I've done worse. But no kids. Understand? I nodded toward the frightened girl. The regular-sized mobster tried to intervene.
"This is Frank DeFranco,"
he said, before reaching into his coat pocket.
"Willie said you'd be no trouble, and that our relationship could be mutually beneficial. He didn't say anything."
I snatched his lapels and swept out his legs, letting his full weight dangle from my hands. I'd always been strong, but not like this. I lifted and placed him gently on the nearest stool as if he were a child. He looked both confused and embarrassed, and thought better of revealing the weapon he'd been reaching for. The swing band stopped playing. Gamblers forgot about their play to observe. Mobsters looked to their gargantuan boss for direction.
"Spook,"
he said.
"You just made the worst decision of your life."
He waved away the tension and smiled at his guests, while signaling for the music to resume. Jazz replaced the more raucous swing, an effort to further calm the tension in the room. "The girl leaves with me, Frank," I said. He rolled his eyes.
"She wanted to come in."
"Doesn't look like she wants to stay." The massive hand he used to cup her chin looked easily capable of squashing anyone's skull like a grape.
"You want to stay, right?"
Her eyes met mine briefly before she found some courage. "I'm sorry, Mr. DeFranco. I want to go home." "I'll take her," I said. "Need to get some air anyway." Frank huffed in the poor girl's face, before hunching to sulk over the bar. A shot of whiskey materialized under his nose. He'd be fine. I extended my elbow, and the girl nervously entwined her slender arm. There, I said. "You'll be home for milk and cookies in no time." We walked out the exit unchallenged by the gunmen. The hallway ended at a false wall where another doorman waited. "Have a nice evening," he said, opening a secret door on a busy kitchen for a Chinese food restaurant. None of the workers acknowledged our presence, and we exited into a back alley where 2 more mobsters smoked cigarettes and shared a flask. "Where do you live?" I asked the girl. She didn't answer until we made it to the sidewalk of Tour Hill, a strip of attractions, restaurants, and hotels that had sprung up in the past decade. When I'd left my hometown, most of this had been greenery and campgrounds. "Ferry Street," she said. "Old neighborhood," I said. "Pretty far. We'll take a cab." "No," she said, appalled by the idea. "I can walk you." She bolted, dodging fluidly through gawking tourists staring at the abundance of neon signage. "Hey, wait!" I understood she might want to run away from all men and just get home as quick as she knew how. But Ferry Street was far, and the places in between not safe for a young lady alone at night. So I followed and quickly closed the distance. Inexplicably, she darted into a narrow alleyway between a pawnshop and a diner. Just like Guzenko.
No,
I tried to caution.
not in there.
The narrow passage could be the sole entrance on a dead end, the preferred rest stops of vagrants and tramps. I often sought refuge in such places when on a mission requiring no trail whatsoever. I let out a deep breath when I found her, weeping in a heap on a weedy patch of dirt. The alley had ended in the ideal space I described, but it was empty. "Hey," I said gently. "I know it's scary. I'm a stranger and your night didn't go as planned, but I'm here to help, truly." "I took a wrong turn," she said. "Please, don't hurt me. Let me go, please." I stood aside the exit. "Of course. I just wanted to make sure you got home. Bridal Veil Lake isn't safe the way you're headed." On shaky legs, she rose and wiped her snotty nose with the back of her hand. She trudged apprehensively to the exit. I had no intention of stopping her and thought I'd trail unseen to ensure her safety. She paused, however, and wrapped her spindly arms around my waist to sob into my shirt. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm scared. I want to go home." And she cried some more. "It's all right." I patted her head and tried shushing her again. The trembling in her tiny shoulders wouldn't abate. "Hey, I don't even know your name. Mine's Alton." "Alton Anderson?" she asked, and the shuddering ceased. The tears ended. "How?" She placed her chin uncomfortably into my solar plexus and looked up at me and grinned. "Kitty Esposito," she said, before I heard the ominous spring of a switchblade. Too late, I pulled away. Her left arm held my torso. The girl jammed the steel into my lower back, near the spine. I flopped into the dirt. She'd hit something important near the spinal column. I'd be paralyzed forever if I didn't bleed to death. Kitty Esposito laughed. "Ridiculous. I should have been sent to a real country. An American might have put up a fight. A Brit. There was a Scotsman once." I tuned her out, aware of death approaching. I'd been correct about the Soviets winning the secret war. Intrepid had given zero information, and probably gone to his own assassination in Toronto. It was over. "Oh, honey," she said, olive again, somewhere in the air. "You get one rescue a day. That's the best I can do. Understand?" Kitty crouched on my chest. Swollen eyes widened with exhilaration. She enjoyed killing. She would enjoy ending my life. A 15-year-old girl with a switchblade and a hungry smile. What a world. The wounds in my back closed. Whatever caused the paralysis had miraculously mended. My strength, no, new strength, coursed through my veins. Kitty sensed it and whisked the switchblade at my face. I bucked her over my head and rolled onto my feet. The girl had somersaulted, twisted, and charged, an ungodly shriek tearing from her throat. "Die!" I threw a quick roundhouse kick against her face, and she barely noticed. The switchblade sliced into my shin before I'd retracted my leg, and she kept coming with the weapon. "You have to kill the girl, Alton," Olive insisted apprehensively. "No." I could have taken her head with a garrote, or armed myself with a penknife. The gun in my shoulder holster was possibly the quietest firearm ever made. But it wouldn't be right. I couldn't kill a child. For God's sake, I wouldn't. I ducked a wide arc of the vicious blade, but caught a knee in the teeth for my trouble. I fell backwards. Such power in a tiny girl. How could this be happening? Rage, accompanied by elation, are the symptoms of lunacy. She's not crazy, Alton. I finally caught her wrist and managed a shoulder throw into the weeds. Kitty coiled like a snake, barely affected by an impact that would have knocked most men out. Her attack resumed. I bore another gash dangerously close to my Achilles tendon. Alton, my love, she's possessed. What? Another swipe cut through my eyebrow. A swath of blood deleted depth perception. I had to close the left eye. Talking to your bitch? Kitty mocked. She breathed heavily, exhaling spouts of steam like a warhorse. You reek of the horse daughters of Lilith. We know they switched sides. Another switchblade appeared in the girl's left hand. Oh, swell, I remarked. I would have rolled my eyes if one of them wasn't in danger of filling with blood. Be warned, mortal, she said, her voice shedding the pretense of humanity. Instead, a grating, pain personality took control of her vocal cords. The daughters of Lilith are fickle. She will be sweet, embed you, and breed forth more cambions for the army of the depths. Then, when your youth has been spent and frailty takes hold, she will leave and lay with the next poor bastard. Don't believe them, Olive whispered into my ear, soft lips brushing intentionally against my lobe. They're lowly scum, nameless, and accursed. The girl, but not, laughed, and the sound of it chilled my soul. Even now you blush because she speaks to you, says we are liars. Tell me, Alton Anderson, did she show you her face? I suppose my expression answered the question, because it laughed again. Listen, I don't know what the hell's going on. And I will explain, it snapped, as you die. A torrent of vomit, green, acidic, shot from its mouth. I leapt high against the brick wall, where my fingers remarkably found purchase in the receded mortar. Just my index and thumb, pinching the edge of a brick, holding the entirety of my weight. Like a flea, Kitty, but not, said. We exist in your world if we have a host. Animals and humans are ideal. Buildings, too. It flicked her wrist, and a switchblade shot into my bicep. I groaned. It hurt, but not as much as it should have. I dropped from my perch. What the hell does any of this have to do with me? More laughter. The sound of it had swiftly expired my patience. We have always been here. We'll always be here. We fill you up, meat puppets, and make you fight, so that we may feed on your suffering and experience the physical gifts we were denied in creation. That I'd have to think about. What are you? What are you called? Never ask, Olive warned. But the creature bowed without taking its eyes from me. My name is Legion, for we are many. Simple. Keep it simple. Intrepid? What nightmare have we been ordered into? Kill it, Olive urged me. It's the only way. She's possessed, I said. She needs a priest. That only works, Olive began, but her words were interrupted by another assault. I seized a wrist again and pressed her to the ground, locking her arm in a hold capable of breaking bones. And it, just let it happen. Without hesitation, the creature dislocated a shoulder and the associated elbow. The crunch of bone spoke of fracture. Her teeth sank into my neck. I released the badly damaged arm and stood up. It held on with its mouth and clawed at my face. If it got my other eye. Pitching backwards, I crushed her small frame against the brick wall. Another pop to punctuate an injury, but still it did not relent. I gained hold of the fingers that clawed and bent them away. I will break both of your arms if you don't stop, I shouted to no avail. Fingers, wrists, tendons stretched to tearing. The creature sacrificed more of the girl to focus on the teeth sinking into my neck. I'd bleed to death if she reached an artery.
You have to understand, Alton,
Olive pleaded.
Exorcism only works if the possessed wants to be free. This girl gave herself up a long time ago. There is no hope.
I drove the back of my head into the girl's nose. It popped, and hot blood soaked into my hair. I had to keep going. I had no choice. Again and again, I smashed her face, until, at last, the grip of her jaw slackened along with her petite body. I snatched the switchblade and took the other from my arm. The girl's ruined face contorted into a mockery of the formerly pretty child. She began to cry.
Please don't hurt me.
Her voice dropped the demonic tone effortlessly.
I want to go home. Don't fall for it, Alton.
Olive's ghostly fingertips applied pressure to the bleeding from my neck and shoulder. She didn't have enough digits to soothe all the wounds I'd accrued at the hands of the girl.
Kill her. Fast.
I tossed one of the switchblades over my shoulder and knelt down by Kitty.
Come on. Let's get you home.
With my free hand, I gripped her by the bicep and lifted. The offered momentum spurred her final attack, teeth gnashing at nothing as I drove the knife in my other hand up through her exposed neck, into her brain. Her body spasmed. Then, she died. I removed the knife. I had killed her. A teenage girl. Remorse isn't the ideal virtue of an agent. I couldn't afford it when I killed men. I didn't have time for it now. I killed Kitty Esposito, I said for Olive's benefit. The mission is done. Now tell me everything, or I'm taking the cyanide way out.
Alton, she said. Go back to the apartment. I can fix you, but you need to rest. You've lost a lot of blood.
Now, I repeated. The pills were in the cigarette case. I could take them all, and wager with Olive over which would end things first. I would bet on the ricin.
It's as the Nameless Ones described,
she said quickly. Her concern seemed genuine, or she needed me alive. Am I possessed by you?
No. A priest might say you're demonically oppressed, not possessed. I'm merely hanging around. By wearing my mark, however, I can augment your strength and endurance, close your wounds from time to time.
Are you a demon?
You have said so.
Olive sounded wistful.
But the truth is, we're more like humans than many of our kind care to admit.
Invisible lips kissed through the cut on my elbow, ending the fire there, stopping the bleeding.
Like you, we named ourselves. And like you, the words we used varied because we vary.
The girl. The thing in her said something about the depths, and that they were legion. I've read the Bible. Another tender kiss I could not see but felt landed on the bite.
We tell stories too. Many believe in them. Not me. I don't pretend to know. Come on, Alton. These patches are temporary. You'll begin to bleed again soon.
Intrepid has one of you hanging around with him.
We all do, don't we?
All the agents?
Yes, he does. Very few agents do.
I felt like taking a seat in the weeds. What the hell is going on?
Did it ever occur to you that nobody knows?
The next kiss, against my bicep, wasn't so tender.
Our kind do enjoy the physicality of humans, and taking hold of a human body is desirable. There's more. We live in this world too,
And there are many amongst us that wage proxy wars through your kind to control it. To control you. So you switch sides? Why? Goodness of your heart? Like you, Alton, I follow orders. Now get moving. Your next mission is already beeping through the closet door. I observed the girl. Her corpse. Why did she give herself to that thing? Olive sighed like an exhausted teacher. Some stories, Alton, are too sad to tell. She would have taken anyone's offer if it gave her hope of escaping what she faced at home. You call us demons, but I've only seen humans make hell. She had a point there. What about her body? Let it be discovered, Olive said, and justice will unfold for Kitty. Trust me. When you show your face, I snapped. The temporary fix of her kiss ceased. Blood flowed into my eye. That, she said, I cannot do. Why? Because you'll fall in love. And so will I. That... Okay. Finally, I started moving, mulling over her last words and the ordeal in the alley. I thought of asking for clarification on her last statement, but felt too exhausted, and more than a little overwhelmed. The cozy apartment, some whiskey, and the bed drew my steps. I'd build a fire in the hearth. I'd ignore the Hydra, and never go outdoors again. When we arrived at the kitchen entrance to the restaurant, the mobsters playing cards stopped to gawk, but didn't bother me otherwise. They were used to blood. They'd been told to leave the spook alone. Frank DeFranco leaned against the bar. The swing music had resumed in my absence. Smoke filled the room. Men shouted and cheered and swore over bets won and lost. 2 young girls had replaced Kitty Esposito. Frank spotted me enter. I stared at him. He at me. Before I could cross the busy floor, he wrapped his arms around the kids and forcefully guided them to a closed door, swiftly opened by one of his goons, and closed it after they'd gone inside. I went to that spot. The same mobster I'd sat on the stool got in my way. He held his hands up in surrender.
That room is soundproof, Spook. They never come out.
He wisely got out of my way. Olive didn't protest, but I could feel her apprehension over my weakened state. Sorry, I told her, but this can't wait. Frank, and a few of his most loyal men, died that night. I only used my hands. Each one bled to death after I ripped off varying lengths of their arms. The big man died with his pants down and a stupid look on his face. I escorted the girls back to the gambling floor, along with one of Frank's hands. Aside from the mobsters by the bar, nobody noticed or cared about the man up to his elbows in blood. I gave the hand to the guy who tipped me off. You're promoted. Understand?
Yes, sir,
he said.
Adam DeFranco, Frank's brother. Thank you for...
He smiled.
I'll make sure they get home. You have my word.
He seemed to realize the severed hand then, and passed it to one of his new underlings.
Clean up in there.
He pointed to the layer of carnage I'd made. Then he snapped at the bartender.
And get get him a drink. And a towel.
Alton Anderson, I said. I saw no reason to hide it. It felt good to give my real name. And not tonight. I went to the elevator.
Have a good night, Mr. Anderson,
Adamo said, gesturing for his men to do the same. They did so with less enthusiasm. Understandable. A lot had changed in a very short amount of time. I fell into bed, and felt Olive climb in and press against my side. The warmth of her naked skin soothed and pulled apart the threads of consciousness. I slept like a baby. Another name came from the Hydra. I wrote it down, but left it on the mantel for a few days. Inside the apartment, I drank and burnt up the stock of firewood. During the day, I stared out the tall window at gray skies until they turned to night. Then I watched the fire. I had nothing to eat. Olive pushed gently for me to leave the apartment. "Read the newspaper today." I had breakfast with Adamo in the restaurant. He handed me the paper.
"What terrible luck for that poor girl,"
he said. Kitty Esposito's body had been discovered. When police went to her home, Mr. Esposito answered the door naked. Constables took him into custody and entered to find Kitty's mother in a dog kennel, and an even smaller one with a painted wooden sign. Kitty, it read. "Justice of a kind?" Olive whispered. "Excuse me, Adamo," I told my new acquaintance. "I have to get going." I couldn't cry in front of him. Ethereal arms cradled my head while I slept. "Olive," I whispered, "why did a demon find Kitty? Why not an angel?" "Because, Alton darling," she said, "there aren't any." "Oh. It's just us." "Just us? What happens to you? Those like you? If the host dies?" She patted my cheek. "We go to the void, and can't come back unless summoned by name and ritual. And if you're all in the void?" Olive didn't answer that one. I fetched the next name off the mantel. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.